Good afternoon, everybody. Today is October 15th, 2025. This is the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board meeting. My name is George Coloris, and I'll be your administrator. Welcome. I'm going to start with the roll call. If I call your name and you're here, just say present. Valerie Opara.
Present.
Ta Cha.
Present.
Eric Nelson.
Present.
Jessica Finaccio.
Present.
Present. Excellent. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order.
I'd like to make a motion to call meeting to order, start the meeting.
We got a motion from Tai Cha to start the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Going to move towards a motion to approve the minutes from the August, September 17th meeting, 2025.
So moved. I second.
Got a motion from Tai Cha to accept the minutes from the meeting from October 17th. I'm sorry, August 7th. What do I got that? I'm sorry. September 17th, 2025, seconded by Valerie Opara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have any continued business from the last meeting we need to discuss? Anybody wants to discuss?
No.
Okay, we're going to move on to new business for today. We're going to need a motion to vote to determine the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust model.
I'll make a motion to determine the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust model.
We have a motion from Eric Nelson to vote to determine the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust model. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Tai Cha. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So the choices are a funding entity model, active initiator model, or hybrid model. All those in favor of funding entity model, say aye.
They might have discussion first.
Do we have any discussion on the funding entity model?
None here.
We've spoken about it before. Is everybody okay with that? Any discussion on the active initiator model?
Nope.
Any discussion on the hybrid model?
None.
Nope.
All those in favor of a hybrid model, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. We forwarded an email about our community preservation eligibility application for the amount of $310,000. We need a vote to approve the application. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to vote to approve the Community Preservation Act application.
We have a motion from Eric Nelson
Second.
seconded by Tai Cha to approve the community preservation application in the amount of $310,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the next motion. Was to delegate the responsibility to the City of Lowell staff to complete the research and due diligence of potential suitable projects.
So, George, just a question on this. I want
Yes,
to
sir.
comment. Just for the minutes going forward, this is going to be motion 3, not number 2. And then the next one will be 4, not 3.
Oh, he's, so there's two number twos.
Okay, sorry, folks.
And then, is there any, additional, is this handled kind of in-house? Is there any additional cost or stipend associated with this that we should be aware of?
Do you want me to do that? Sorry. I'm used to having to ask permission to say something. So basically, all that this does is, we just wanted to check in. It's what we're doing anyways. We're doing the preparations. We just, the sort of 10,000-foot view is that we will be doing our due diligence, making sure that we have something that, works within the ARPA rules and that sort of thing, and then bringing it forward for you guys to consider, discuss, and vote. So, along the way, and you'll see that further along in your meeting minutes, we want to gather, some feedback so we make sure that we're headed in the right directions. So those are kind of the things that we wanted to make sure and to strategize with you as we go along. But given that we have such a really limited, short time, and given that you guys aren't, full-time staff, we thought it made sense to, do this delegation and to check in with you as we go along, as we've been doing. Since you guys are a new organization. We were thinking, as George and I talking, that it made sense to sort of set, the precedent of, the delegation and that sort of thing. But essentially, it's what we were doing anyways. But we just kind of wanted to bring it up as a topic for discussion and, kind of let you know where we're at. And so we'll have more updates on how that's going later on in the agenda as well.
I have a question. So how long will you work with us, since this is new to us? Is there like a certain time frame that you're going to work with us, and then you'll say, okay, then you can work on your own?
So, I am, officially, I am not a housing lady, but I am here sort of in the ARPA capacity. So as long as you have ARPA money, I will be around. And George is awesome, and you're stuck with George, so George will be around probably longer than me. But if there's ever anything that I can help you with after ARPA that's helpful,
And
George
she's hitting
is-
on the key point. It's because it's ARPA funds that we're one-time funded with, we need to follow the ARPA rules with this round of money. Going forward, in a year from now, it'll be a little bit different. But right now, it's pivotal that we follow all the ARPA rules, so that when we lend, we put the money out, we can be in compliance. So that's why we have that.
Just want to confirm for my own understanding. So the term due diligence here says the city staff will review the application to make sure that at least it meet or satisfy the minimum criteria based on the funding requirement. Is that right? Okay.
Based
So-
on the funding requirements, and then also we're looking at it from several angles, because there's rules specific to ARPA, then there's other federal rules that, depending on which ARPA thing you're doing, may or may not apply. Then there's, layers of state requirements that apply to you guys as a housing trust. Then there's the local city, procedures, and so there's a lot of moving parts. For something like this, let's just say in an example of something that required an RFP, the city has, the resources in, procurement department and, all different areas like the law department and things like that, that will be, available resources. There may be other areas. For example, there are some limited city staff that work on certain federal programs. So if we did, and we'll talk about this later in the meeting, if we did any of those programs specific to that funding, because we're allowed to sort of use ARPA funds to follow the rules of an existing federal program in limited capacities. So if a staff member was somebody who was used to doing that, we'd sort of drag them in with us as well to help us guide us through, since there's somebody who would be an expert at all of that. So it depends on which projects and which types of opportunities we're doing, who would be involved, but generally that's the overview.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to add one more thing so that I reaffirm my thinking. Technically, we don't possess technical knowledge with regard to the funding criteria. Therefore, the recommendation would be made by an expert, which is the city staff, to see this project. They would make recommendation. By getting to that point, that means the project meet all kind of criteria already. So for us, it's just to make the decision based on the recommendation.
We would be voting on it, the city would make the recommendation. The professional staff of the city will recommend a project, the board would vote on it. If you could hit your button to it, that'd be great.
Thank you. Because we don't have the expertise in that area.
Yep.
Thank you.
So just to follow up on that,
Yes,
so
Eric.
depending upon the particular projects that are being presented, any kind of due diligence that will be required will be vetted and handled by city staff in advance. So whether
That's what
it's
we're looking for.
physical due diligence, environmental due diligence, financial feasibility, all of those things, like, we'll get to see and opine upon that, but it will be compiled by staff
City
or the applicant.
Of course, yeah, to the best of the city's ability, absolutely. And, letting you know what our findings were and things like that. So depending on the situations, right now, we're only talking about generalities. And I think it's good from, also from a liability standpoint, also to kind of keep everything as general right now, because we're looking to figure out, here are the buckets of types of opportunities that would make the most sense, given the compliance and timeline that we have. And then we would get into, the best, fair process of finding out, potential projects for that, whether it be an RFP or some other procurement process. So they're all different, so we can, and that's on agenda item, let's see, the motion to discuss funding opportunities for LAHTF. And I can definitely get into more details about that. This motion is more so that we wanted to double check that you feel comfortable that we're working on this, and just checking for feedback, and just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
No, I think it makes great sense. I mean, we're volunteers, and I don't think we have the time or the resources to do that, so thank you.
Definitely understand.
Appreciate that, yeah.
So can we move forward with that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that LAHTF delegate responsibility to the City of Lowell staff to complete research and due diligence of potential suitable projects.
Second.
Got a motion by Eric Nelson to discuss that the Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund delegate the responsibility to the City of Lowell staff to complete research and due diligence of potential suitable projects for the fund. Seconded by Tai Cha. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving to the next agenda item.
So, just a couple questions on this. One, there's a typo, policy, that each different type, that is misspelled. You're missing the A, just for the minutes going forward.
Apologize for that.
I don't understand, I guess maybe you can walk us through this one as well, because I don't know how we make a vote to approve or not approve. We kind of have to pick one or the other, don't we?
Yeah. So what it is that we have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then underneath the fund, we have different accounts. Like, for example, the Community Preservation Act, if we get approved for that loan, for that application, that money can't be put into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It has to be put into a separate account underneath the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, because the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is opera funds. Is that right, Jess?
And I can explain, it's sort of like if you're picturing like the larger container of housing, affordable housing trust funds is called the fund in terms of our accounting. And then underneath that can be multiple accounts. And so because CPA funds typically would be required to be in their own account, ARPA is also required to be in its own account, and most likely other grant types typically are asked to be in its own account. So it's not something that you guys need to do on your end, it's something that is handled in the accounting end of things. So basically when George, and we made sure that George had access to all of this now, so basically George will be able to see, looking up the Housing Trust Fund, which will show right now there's only the potential for one account because you only have one funding source at the moment. But if you hopefully have more, 2 or 3, maybe someday, you would then have multiple accounts within that fund. So everything's kept separate so that, say you get another federal grant a couple of years from now, that will be separated from your CPA funds, and the same thing with ARPA from CPA, so that everything is able to be balanced within its own funds and not commingled.
It's literally a different line item in the system, so it'll say the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of the monies that we have in there. Then, for example, if CPA were to come in, we'd add that as an account to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So it's more of it's like an accounting measure that we have to follow.
Yeah, kind
as
of
well.
like
Can't put them in the same account.
yeah, like having 2 checking accounts for the same thing. It's the same kind of idea.
But I just want to go just a little deeper for my own understanding too, Mr. Chairman, through Mr. Chairman, is that, okay, so technically there would be multiple, yeah,
There we go. I put my hand there. But, so there would be multiple accounts. However, seeing it as like we have CPA fund, now we have ARPA, then there might be other funding come from federal.
Yes.
I assume the criteria might be different, right? So is that because of that? That's why we have it separately? We can't?
One of the reasons, yes.
One of the reasons.
Yeah, and as
Different
of
rules.
right now, there's only one funding source, so there's only one anyways. But we're just thinking moving forward, it'd be good to, just have an indication from the board if they're, supportive. Because basically the idea is that most, if not all, of the time when you're getting a new funding source, like a grant given, they want to see everything separated. Not always, but generally, even if it's not required, it's a good idea to do. So that would just be an idea. You probably, unless you got a ton of grants all at once, which would be great, but usually you'll probably only have 2 to 3 different funding sources at any given time. The housing trusts are allowed to accept donations, for example. So if somebody were to leave you something in their will or something like that, you might want to think about putting that in a potential separate line. But for sure, for the ones that are required to be kept separately, this policy would ensure that that you do so.
So just want to expand on that a little bit. So technically, multiple account, so that also can serve multiple program and multiple project that would meet specific criteria too. So that's, we can serve multiple purpose
Makes
and
us
multiple
versatile.
project. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, so we have the fund and then accounts in the fund that give versatility.
Great questions, great questions. Any other
Yeah, I
questions?
have a question. So you mentioned that we'd have to have separate account, but now when you disperse it, based on the criteria, you're going to disperse out of different accounts also?
It's a great question. So, like, say you fast forward in time, where you're all done with ARPA and you have 2 different projects open. One is funded with CPA funds and one was funded with another grant that you received. You could have those 2 things open at the same time, and then the funds would just be delegated to whichever fund, so you could choose, okay, hey, each of the grants and each of the funds have different requirements, as you were mentioning. So, for example, CPA funds can only be used in certain ways. And so say you wanted to do something that didn't fit into the parameters of CPA, but you had another fund, and then you could just say, okay, well, we're going to do that, but we're going to pay for it with these other funds. That sort of keeps you flexible and everything easy to sort out with accounting. Like for us, for example, under one fund, we have hundreds of accounts, just in like one department alone, right? So this would be that you guys probably only have a couple of accounts at the same time. But George will be able to pull a report that shows all of them at the same time because they're structured that way, which is great.
I guess this is one of the component that we can, if you don't mind, we can speak just a little bit longer. Now, with regard to the funding that have to be spent, okay, so we don't have much time, about 16, what is it? Yeah, let's say 16 months, right?
Less.
Less than
14, I mean.
Yeah, 14 months. So I don't know the criteria under this ARPA funding, but it might require all kinds of things, depending on the project. Therefore, are we treating this ARPA funding as a loan or treating it as a grant? What kind of formula are we looking at here? So,
Great question. So the City of Lowell was awarded a little bit over $76 million in ARPA funding, and that was given way back during, it was as a result of COVID-19. And of those $76 million and some change, the $3.3 million that was awarded to your housing trust was included. And obviously it took a long time because, to make a housing trust and to go through the whole processes takes a lot of legal requirements and process and things like that. So now you guys are here and we have the shorter period of time to do the spending. But technically the ARPA funding is a federal grant given to the City of Lowell, and then the City of Lowell has granted what's called an interagency agreement between you guys and the City of Lowell as an agreement to spend the money.
May I?
we're going to have to spend the money, but what I'm saying, if there's a project, okay, if we have to award funding, award in what form? Is it form of a loan or a grant?
Well, we voted on the hybrid model, so we're going to do
You can do either.
We can do either,
potentially
that's
do
why we
either.
kept it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, the ARPA funding itself, you can do both,
So
under
for
ARPA
the,
funding.
yes,
Yes.
yes, and
That's what I
and
have
each
confirmed,
comes
yeah.
with different sets
Yes.
of rules, and depending on how you're doing it, there's many, many layers of compliance. But we've limited down to the 4 that are, make more sense given the amount of time that we have and the amount of compliance that's required. We put it into 4 of the most accessible options. And so that's on later in the agenda under the funding opportunities, and we can go through each of the ones and in detail too.
Thank you. Before we move to that, can we get a motion to approve a policy that the different type of funding shall be held in a separate account under the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve a policy that each different type of funding shall be held in separate accounts under the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust.
I second.
Motion made by Eric Nelson, seconded by Valerie Opara to approve a policy that each different type of funding shall be held in a separate account under the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Any more discussion about that? Anybody have any questions about that? We're going to move forward to additional new business, which is exactly what Jessica was talking about the different models of the funding opportunities for the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Can we talk about those a little bit? So the first one is,
Do you need a motion to discuss, or?
we don't need a motion.
Okay.
I don't think we need a motion to discuss it, but I can
Okay.
make one. But we can move forward with one. Can I get a motion to discuss the funding opportunities of the Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Motion to discuss the funding funding opportunity for the Affordable Trust Fund.
Second.
Motion made by Tai Cha to discuss the funding opportunities for the City of Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund, seconded by Eric Nelson. So we'll move to discussion. So the first one,
Okay, great. So, so first I want to talk generally about the 4 as a whole, and then get into the individual ones. So we talked a little bit about the short timeline. The timeline for us isn't just short because of the requirements of ARPA, it's also short because housing projects and grants and affordable housing in general takes a long time, as you guys know, to do all of it. And normally, there are some aspects, certain types of grants where they might not be in a rush because they might be, either not completed with their funding, or they might have already built it. There's a million different scenarios where somebody might not be in a rush in affordable housing, but for us, we are in a rush due to the funding. And the level of compliance and all the things that need to happen in terms of assistance from the law department, due diligence. Thank you. I'm sorry. I was told I didn't have my mic on. My bad. So those are the things that we're looking at: the timeline and the applicable laws and requirements.
Jessica, sorry to interrupt you. Before you go on, I remain very concerned about the timing. With regards to that, is it allocating funds to projects, or do those projects have to be completed?
And I apologize in advance. I feel like sometimes it's a little bit of a broken record, but it depends on the type of project. So some projects are the minute that we fund, then that's when the money is considered expended. Sometimes it's the day of the closing. It depends on what kind of a funding opportunity we're doing, when it would be considered. Sometimes it's, when it is built and we're able to get an occupancy permit and satisfy, different layers of the agreement. So it depends on which item we were doing. So we, in, creating this list and combing through all of the many, many different types of options that there are, we focused on the language that the Treasury gave us in terms of the things that they sort of said, here are some things you could do, and then they sort of said, here are some things that, they didn't say we'd love for you to do, but they highlighted as things that are considered presumptively eligible. And their definition of presumptively eligible is as long as you stay within these confines of doing these certain things for your project, then it's an eligible use of ARPA. For us, that's very attractive because unlike other federal programs, with ARPA, there is very little ability for us to say, here's our project, we'd like for somebody to let us know if this is ARPA eligible. There is very little capacity for that in this federal program because they gave money to, every town, county, city in the United States. So the presumptively eligible ones, those being sort of the most attractive, and then focusing further on that, the ones that or best suited to some of Lowell's needs, also filtered by things that are the compliance portion of things is either shorter or easier to manage or more within our hands. So for example, certain kinds of grants, and anybody who has done grants, and I know you have done a lot of things with that too, sometimes when you're having a situation where you're giving a grant to somebody else, it can be, like pulling teeth to get information. Sometimes, you ask for 4 things and you're hoping to get it in 2 weeks. It might be 2 months, 3 months, and they still haven't gotten you all of those items. And then you're sort of left with, okay, well, I have to decide, do I not give you this funding and give it to someone else? We don't have the time for those kinds of scenarios. There are, a lot of other communities that had existing housing trusts that started, in 2021, 2022. Lowell wasn't in that situation, so it's a great blessing that you guys have one now and that you're here. But we want to make sure that the money that you guys do have, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, is spent expeditiously. And I will say, having just come into this task very recently, having just met George and this whole thing, we've really done a very extensive crash course in terms of me getting George up to speed on a lot of the different ARPA requirements. We've met for many hours talking about some of the things that you guys have mentioned about preferences, talking about the needs, and really combing through all of the regulations and trying to find ones that are best fit our situation and our needs.
May I? Okay, I think I can say that it is typical for any affordable housing project. It would take a long time. It starts with seed money all the way to construction. So it's involved a lot. So if we are talking about affordable housing at this point, if we start now, we're not going to be able to spend the money at the end of 2026. And if the project is shovel-ready, most of the projects already been funded. You see what I mean? So it's there, it's committed by either the, equity contractor or GC, and all of those are in place. And if we're looking for any shovel-ready, it would be falling within either seed money or housing preservation. Because if a new construction, it's already lined up, or it's going to take a long time.
So
So,
I agree. So I think any project that comes before the trust, the board, I'm going to assume is presumptively ARPA compliant. Otherwise, the city wouldn't bring it to us. What I would request also, that part of that due diligence package, is that we're informed of what category it falls in that we talked about earlier. Is it allocation or is it C of O? Because to your point, if the project hasn't broken ground yet, there's no way you're going to build it, get your C of O by the end of next year. So
And the good news is, though, we can actually acquire land. You can buy land, and we don't have to build on it right away. It's considered spent. So if we had lots that we could develop affordable housing on or somebody knew of, we can buy it. The money's considered spent, right, Jessica?
Yep,
And
and-
it's not. So we could buy land in the city, private or owned by the city, either or.
And both of those are excellent points. I agree with everything that you guys said. When when this task was first discussed, and what was it, this was a month ago?
Really difficult.
I said, okay, well, this, usually takes X amount of time. And so digging deep into these regulations and our requirements, we've had to really be creative and make sure that what we're doing poses the absolute minimum risk in terms of not meeting those deadlines. I can't guarantee you at this point, because it is early and we don't have a short amount of time. I can't guarantee you that there'll be a situation where every single dollar will be utilized for this perfectly. But I am very committed to it. I think that we have an excellent plan to make that happen, and I do feel confident for it. What I think makes sense to do is to go with those sort of lowest hanging fruit opportunities that minimize what's needed from the city, or there are some instances where what's needed from the city is actually maximized, sort of like if you think of a seesaw, where many of the typical grants for affordable housing, a lot of the time and requirements that what stretches out the time is by the developer. We're looking at avenues that would basically eliminate or really minimize that level of stretching out. So just to kind of continue on the general conversation, our goal here today isn't to get like a specific vote on any of these 4 items, with one exception that I'll give an example. None of them are specific addresses. For liability reasons, we always want to keep, this discussions as general as possible until they do get, it to be a specific application. But going back to that presumptively eligible, the recommended 4 items that we have for you are going to be under that presumptive eligibility. So the other thing that we are very focused on, and is a tall task, is focusing on opportunities where the trust would receive funds back. So, for example, the one way that wouldn't be necessarily easy, but we could get a lot of money out at once, would be to put an RFP out for just straight grants, which is what the majority of the communities did. They offered straight grants in exchange for deed restrictions for affordable housing. The pros of that is obviously it tends to be easier to give money away, right? But the con on that was that the trust has done a lot of discussions about wanting to have a loan money that's returning, so that you're sort of always having more money that you could put forward. And the idea behind this very large sum of what the city was given being allocated as available to you, the goal being so that money would be able to return. So that is a tall order, and the 4 items are designed to fit that requirement, as opposed to just giving the money away, which is an option that is eligible under ARPA, to give the money away in order for a deed restriction.
I have a question, sorry to interrupt, about the grants. Is there a certain amount that you can give one individual for a grant?
Great question. It all depends on the project. So, for example, you just from a practicality standpoint, you wouldn't want to give $2 million for like one affordable housing unit, right? But there might be a situation where, say if a developer was willing to give 10 of their 20 units, that you might say, okay, that's a very large number of your units. The amount that it's going to cost you over the lifetime of this building to not be able to charge the full market rate rent is so high that in order to get a developer to be able to do it, that it might be worth it. So it really depends on the situation, and it depends on the value of the market rate rent of where you are. For example, like an apartment in one area versus another might be more expensive. So if you're limiting it to, like, let's say for example 80% AMI, the financial impact that would have on a developer in one street, versus 2 streets over might be really different. It might cost him $500 a month here. It might cost him $700 a month here because this building has some luxury features or something like that. So it's definitely something that I recommend that you guys keep flexible on a case-by-case basis, unless you were doing something like an open grant situation of, that we had, just discussed of giving the money away. Then for ease of use, you might say, a suggested amount per unit, just to kind of get the conversation started. But I would still always recommend keeping that open, only because developers, if they see a number and they can't make the number work, they won't apply. So if, the number for them might be just slightly over, right? So we don't want to stop them from applying. And this is something I see actually in a lot of the housing trusts that might have this issue. You'll see, I would say probably one of the more common issues in housing trusts is having a number of requirements that sort of the developer looks at it and they don't even want to apply to the grant. It's very common for some communities to not receive applicants that they consider to be desirable because either their AMI is too tough or whatever the situation is, that the developer look in and say, I can't make the numbers work. I am willing to work with you, but I can't, go bankrupt. Excellent question. And unfortunately, that's another one of the file under, it depends.
Yeah, speaking of AMI, yes. Some of those areas, the number just doesn't add up. It's not possible to move forward unless it, But what I'm getting at is that, because I think the city also need time to prepare. What is the deadline of have to be complete, have to be spent? I know December 31st. Is that December 31st, or the project, the report have to be complete and sent it to the city by a certain date?
So I am not making New Year's Eve plans, just in case. But I hope that we're not here on New Year's Eve. And the goal for the majority of our APA funding is to be completed for the most part by 6:30. There are some departments that are going to be completed by around 9:30, 2026. And you guys are in the category that we're going to do as fast as we possibly can, but in the event that we were in a situation where we spent all of our other money except for the housing trust, and we were doing our last agreement in, say, November or December, that isn't ideal, but I would rather us make sure that we spent the money than not. So again, I hope we're not there, but so we'll do everything that we can in our power to move things forward as quickly as we can. But we do have up to 12/31/2026 to spend the money.
Yeah, and I think we talked about earlier, that's going to be project specific, and you're going to let us know for each project that you present with the due diligence package, what category that falls into, whether it's allocation or whatever the trigger is for qualification.
Right.
C of O, breaking ground, whatever
Right.
it is.
I would recommend that each one actually include an ETA, so that we could understand, because we might have, more applications than we have money. And then that's something that you can take into consideration, is the estimated amount of time that it would take to do that certain thing.
So if these are the 4 types of investment opportunities that the city feels that are most achievable, I don't have an issue with any of them. Some of them are more self-explanatory than others, like the direct land acquisition, the existing market rate conversion. There's actually an article in the Globe today that the city of Newton, their Affordable Housing Trust, contributed to the acquisition of a market rate project with wind to keep some of those units affordable. So I thought that was timely.
Thank you, that's great. We'll definitely take a look at this.
Yep.
Thank you.
The first one, project-specific limited funding per unit, could you expand upon that one a little bit? And if,
Definitely.
You know, and I guess maybe also expand upon D, the principal-only buy-downs via the home program.
Absolutely.
Maybe give us some examples of.
And
both
if that's
those.
okay with you guys, I'll just go through all four, so I give you guys the opportunity to discuss too. Because it might be that I happen to answer the question in the explanation, but if not, then we can ask,
That'd be
you know.
great.
And this is sort of the main chunk of the meeting, so feel free to, me and George are here until however long. I think this is a really important discussion, this, you know, these whole four items. So we'll be here as long as you want us here tonight. So like I said, sort of beginning stages here, we've narrowed down the areas that we think make the most sense. And we're, the idea, preferable to stay open to all four. But if you do have any preferences one way or another on any of these, we would love to know. But hopefully, given that this isn't that many funding opportunities that we might be able to fit into these four, our idea is to sort of stay nimble and to be able to use however many of these opportunities, or, you know, all of one, depending on you know, where we go. So for the first one, which is a specific project limited funding per unit. So this would be a per unit loan award. In ARPA funding, if you're doing affordable housing, and this is across all instances, this is one of the few times where it doesn't depend, that the deed restriction for affordable housing has to be a minimum of 20 years. And if you're doing a loan, the loan needs to be for a minimum of 20 years.
The amortization on it.
So, so those two items are something to keep in mind, you know, for, you know, all of the four items. So for this specific project limited funding per award, you know, say you were doing that loan award where it's a 0% or very low interest loan that's paid back, that's money that's coming back into the housing trust. You know, you would have an example that would be, just for discussion, would be, right now you have, you may have heard of 41 Hurd Street that has an RFP out with the city. And that's the, it's a huge building envelope, and they're able to put a lot of units in there. Now, in that RFP, there is, obviously, they say we would love it if you put any, you know, amount of affordable housing in there. If you're doing that, let us know, because that's something that they can take into consideration when deciding which of the RFPs are most favorable. An example of something that we could do with our ARPA funding under this trust would be, you know, right now, put in an amendment for that, which again, you guys are, this isn't something that, you know, has been like approved and there's more due diligence that were needed. This is just kind of an example for discussion, would be to say, if you're putting in your proposal, you're welcome to do 2 proposals or 1 proposal and include money from the housing trust towards affordable housing deed restriction in exchange for a low or 0% interest loan of X amount. So we most likely want to keep it flexible, because it really depends on what people want to do, whether they want to have, you know, larger bedroom units or smaller. So there's so many different ways to slice it that it'd probably be good to keep it flexible. So say when the city gets through their procurement process, and say the winning bid was somebody that said, you know, for, let's just throw out random numbers. Let's say they said, for $400,000, I'm willing to put a 20-year deed restriction on 3 units to be affordable housing at 80% AMI as part of this larger project. The rest of them would be market rate. And that's part of their proposal. And say that was the one that was the city found most advantageous in their procurement process. Then, you know, that would be something that would, you know, come to you guys, and you could say, okay, that sounds great. and that, area of town will have more affordable housing, and then, we can justify the cost given that, this is what the expected rents are going to be and that sort of thing. So this would be an example of a specific project, limited funding per unit of something that's happening right now. And it's sort of like bonus funding for projects that are already existing or, under construction. We'd be able to say, make this adjustment to what you're doing, and then, and here's the funding that comes with it. Any questions?
I had one question. So you mentioned in your example that they could set aside 3 or so units for affordable housing, so they don't have to do more than that. You could just have a certain amount. It doesn't have to be like a certain requirement.
It's very, very common for developers to only have a portion of their units to be affordable housing. And the challenge for developers is to say, okay, when they go out for funding, to banks and private funders, they have to show how much money they're going to make in the, rent total per unit and, what standard. So when they're doing that, the affordable housing, because it has to stay at a certain percentage level over a long period of time, by the time that 20 years is over, it might be even like very severe in terms of, really depends on how the economy is going and what's happening. So it might be that they're only charging like 50% of their market rate based off of, what the AMI is and relative to Massachusetts. So those are the kind of things that, because for developers it's riskier for them, it's rare. So like, for example, nonprofits, they tend to be the ones that will do like an entire unit as affordable housing. So not all, but that's where you are more likely to see it. And I'm sure there's a million, I know that you guys both probably have a million examples as well. But that's kind of how it would work,
Okay.
yeah. So any other questions with that potential opportunity?
With
The specific project, another question is a concern, because everything have to be, built into the pro forma. I mean, if it's a new project, it's such a short timeline. Just, that's my concern.
Yep,
just wanna-
I agree.
I
Yep,
just want to
yep.
let
Yeah.
Yep. So the next one is direct land acquisition. A private purchase of land from a regular owner, or another potential option is if the city were to gift a lot that's already existing and already owned by the city to the trust. There's also legal ways for it to be that the city doesn't even need to gift it to you, that it actually is just the city maintains ownership, which I think would probably be faster, and you guys offer some funding, and then it gets put out for an RFP, and sort of like ingredients for dinner. They say, okay, well, I bid that I'm willing to purchase this lot and put X amount of affordable housing units on this empty lot based off of these criteria and this AMI and all of these different things with X amount of ARPA dollars from the trust. So they'd put forward their proposal, and then it would be subject to your approval. And that would be how it would be. In terms of ARPA, when the money is spent, so if you were purchasing a private land acquisition from, say, there's a piece of property, a large piece of property in town that has a great building envelope that could be converted from commercial to residential. And say, just for example numbers, say it was about $1 million, right? At the time of the closing, it would be considered that the money was spent. So you don't have to have done the next step of putting it out for an RFP and making all these plans and that sort of thing with somebody yet. The money will have been spent at that time. So because that's more of a legal department, sort of thing to do all their due diligence and the paperwork avenue, that was one of the attractive options that we had for you, because that's something that we can do not instantly, as oftentimes certain pieces of property take some time and due diligence, but certainly being able to pivot a lot faster than construction.
So this is not just direct land acquisitions, it can also be existing improvements.
Yes.
Yes. Similar to what you showed us here, I believe, from Newton, what they did. They bought.
Yeah, I think that's more closer to C, letter C.
Yeah. Existing market, the next one.
But even in the example for B, the direct land, or I guess I would modify this to say land or existing improvements, to clarify that. I would assume when those packages come to us for our consideration, again, the due diligence will be done. There'll be property condition reports, environmental reports, zoning analysis. I wouldn't want to buy a parcel of land for affordable housing and it not be zoned for housing.
Of course.
Right? Like
Yep.
that. Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be a partnership across several departments within the city. And obviously to the best of the city's ability, because we want the same, thing as you guys do, because we want everything to work out. And once we do the, any transaction of spending the ARPA funds, obviously it's subject to, all of the U.S. Treasury guidelines and different things like that. So it depends on how we acquire the property, and there's a whole, it's a little bit easier for the city to acquire the property under certain types of plans. So these are sort of simplified into 4 categories, but definitely make no mistake, it's going to take definitely a community of staff in the city to do all of the moving parts to make sure that whatever potential option we do is a good fit. And in the event of having the lot acquisition, the 20-year deed restriction and the 20-year minimum for the loan still applies, like moving forward in the future. So even if you weren't giving out grants specifically for that, you would need to know, okay, well, we're doing, that's how we're going to use the site moving forward. Any questions on that one until we go to the next one?
So for letter B, it's direct land acquisition. We're going to add or existing improvements on that for our motion, okay? Okay. Make note of that.
And
Letter C.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say,
I was gonna just want to confirm one. I know you brought up 80%, but how high is the AMI will have to be under this ARPA fund?
You decided 100, up to 100, didn't we?
Up to 100. They won't go beyond that, right? Just
So
to mid-income.
Yeah. So in certain types of projects within ARPA, you are technically able to go up to 120%. But what we've seen is that at certain levels, other requirements apply. So it makes sense, I think, to go, I would say 80 is a good threshold in terms of trying to be, reasonable towards your goals, but also towards all of this won't help if we make all these great plans and then no developer wants to do it because the AMI is too low, unfortunately. But for like future projects where there's a lot more time, then that could be something that you guys consider as well. As far as the going up, all that we would have to do is, depending on each of the projects that we're doing, the number can change so long as I have the opportunity to check what guidelines change as a result, because it's the kind of rules where it's like, if this, then that, if this, then that. So all of that is, I would say, flexible, to the point where I would just want to make sure, okay, does it bring other requirements that now take us longer? And at what level AMI does that occur?
Thank you.
The next one here, I just want to make sure my notes that we have gone through. I think we've done it. So next we have the existing market rate conversion to affordable housing. So this is an example of whether it had just been built or whether it's in good shape and has been around for a long time. Market rate units that we say, okay, in exchange for a low or no interest loan, we're going to slap a 20-year plus deed restriction of affordable housing onto X amount of units. And that once that agreement closes and is signed and inked and good to go, that's when the funds have been considered expended. So that is another attractive option for our timeline because, there's, I would imagine, more opportunities for us to be able to potentially do that. So then you would be looking at, who's going to either do the most number of units, what condition are they in. The only problem that you would run into is that you would need to make sure that the conditions are like fully up to code and compliant prior. There is an allowance in ARPA funding for you to be able to fund improvements in order to do what we just described. The problem is that sort of adds to our timeline. So it's not necessarily recommended as our first option, but say there was somebody who had 3 units in a building that maybe had 30 units that were in good shape and could pass code compliance. The city goes in and double checks everything. And, the staff, it seemed as a good partner because remember, it doesn't just end there. We have to make sure that there are going to be people that are going to apply affordable housing correctly moving forward. Once we go through that review process, we would be able to say, okay, well, we recommend, XYZ situations and for this number of units, for this amount of a loan, because it's a loan, money will come back into your trust. And so, keep seeding you guys for future years as those payments go through. Next would be principal-only buy-downs via the HOME program. So there's a federal program called HOME, HOME, and it's one that the city does have here and administers. And getting back to that conversation about having sort of safe harbor anchor for an existing program where we sort of say it's presumptively ARPA eligible if we pretend like what we're doing is part of the home projects, meaning you have to follow every single one of the rules, which they have a lot of their own rules, and you have to follow ARPA's rules. So it's really a mix of the minds of staff. So we do have staff that is an expert in home projects and mixing that together with ARPA and making sure that we are good. And ARPA has said very clear in black and white, if you are administering programs under home with your ARPA funding, we're going to assume that it's eligible so long as you follow those home rules. So that is another strong candidate for us. And so home has a lot of different ways that they can spend their money. Of those ways, the one that fits our situation and our time constraints the most is the principal only buy downs, which would be a situation like, for example, a developer has an existing loan for a building that they already built, right? And we buy down their loan. So, for example, pay off X amount of dollars of their loan in exchange for our loan that supplants it, lower interest or no interest, and in exchange for X amount of units and a 20-year deed restriction and that 20-year loan. So in that circumstance, we would rely on our existing city staff who are experts in home, and do the program through them. So we're using their templates, their forms, their compliance knowledge, and things like that. So that is one of the potential options. And for us, our thought was these 4 funding opportunity options really comprise, I would say, the best of the best in terms of things that would fit us the best given our time that we have left, given all of the compliance requirements, and given Lowell's unique needs. So those, now it might be that the city is able to make a recommendation for several different projects under 1 or 2, or it might mean that, all 4 of these funding options are utilized. Each time that we're going to use a new funding option, it's going to mean that a whole ton of closeout performance requirements that need to be done with ARPA on the city staff side. So if there was a great opportunity with one of them where it said, okay, we'll get this large amount of units in, for X amount of large dollar number, that is something, that we would hope that the board would support, because that enables the city to focus their time on, for example, spending, with 3 $1 million projects is going to be much easier than, $200,000 loans to all of those developers. And the same thing goes. So after 3.3 million is spent with the housing trust, which I would love if it was done by this time next year. Would be great. Say that happens. George and I are going to spend a lot of quality time doing all of our closeout compliance reports at the end of the year. And that's part of the reason why, if at all possible, we'd like to end as early as we can, only to make sure that we have all of those tied up. But in addition, all of the, my main job is the financials for the ARPA program. And because this $3.3 million is sort of floating off to the side, all of our reconciliation and what we need to do on our end prior to that deadline is really going to hinge on what's happening here. So, it's definitely a priority for me. I know it's a huge priority for George, and the administration and all of the staff that we've spoken to has given a huge amount of their time to do everything that we can to make sure that we have the resources to be able to make all of this work for you guys.
I've got a question, maybe two separate questions. One is the home fund. As soon as home fund become involved with whatever the process is, does it trigger across the board or just a portion of the home fund?
The requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like say, and that is an excellent question. So let's pretend that we were going to be giving, just for example's sake, we were going to be giving a $200,000 grant, straight out grant with ARPA, and as part of a deal that's all under the city, where they were going to be also getting separate home funds that wasn't through the trust. It was just through the home department that the city already has. In that situation, we have to make the entire amount that we give to them, including that 200, be compliant fully. So the problem with that is obviously, yeah. So, and the same thing goes when, there might be like other federal funding, the same thing applies, not just to home. So for us in this example, we would be seeking situations where because we're talking about the buy downs in principle only, it would be somebody, they're not trying to get any other funding. They're already built. They're really just looking for sort of a simple exchange of a portion of their commercial loan removed for X amount of units. And that straightforward situation would be a good match for what we're trying to do. Somebody who is doing some of the more complex, multiple funding source situations with multiple federal agencies might be a harder match for us, given that we sort of need to piggyback all of the requirements.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'd like to thank you, George, and whoever else helped you guys come up with these 4 categories, because I'm sure it was a lot of work. So thank you both. It does start to give us some framework to make the decisions going forward. So I think that's a good first step.
Mm-hmm.
I think, showing some progress, which is great. Of those 4, my intuition is that C and D will be most expeditious.
Mm-hmm.
Allow us to meet the timeframe that I think we're all very concerned about. And again, I know I said this at the last meeting and said it again probably multiple times. The sooner you guys can show us deals, the better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that time is of the essence, and we're gonna be coming up against that 6:30 deadline. And we don't want to have you and George sweating it out in October and November and
Mm-hmm.
New Year's Eve and that stuff. So I think that these interaction deals can be shown to us and presented and recommended better.
Mm-hmm. And just as a side note, housing trusts are subject to Mass General Law 30B procurement requirements, which are, as you may have heard before, a lot of work to make sure that everything goes the way that it's required to by law. So there are some limited examples of where we would be able to move quickly to bring a project to you. But there is more likely to be a situation where we say, okay, we're posting an RFP for this situation. We've, put together, 20 pages of documentation to matching this scenario, and then we have to wait for proposals to come back. We could certainly have tighter timelines. We can't have them too tight because obviously the developers need to actually give us the application. But those are some of the options that we have in front of us. So any situations where by law we are allowed to have a shorter process are obviously going to be more advantageous to us in this situation. But if we are in a situation where we have to do a longer process, that is okay, and we're prepared for all of those things. So first, we wanted to find out if these 4 funding opportunities were something that you guys felt good about, and I'll ask you for some sort of like general thoughts in a second, just to make sure that we're on the same page. But from there, what we're going to do is say, okay, these 4 or these 3 or whatever are items that the trust is excited about. Maybe you're okay with all 4, but there's certain ones, like you had mentioned, that you prefer. And now we're going to see what we can do our best to fit within those lines. My ask to you would be, unless there's one of these options that you really don't like, is to sort of be open to whatever the fastest options are that we can find. And then as we have them, we'll bring them forward to you. So you might end up, an example would be, we're posting an RFP for this scenario of one of these 4 items. We come, and check in with you and say, okay, here's what are going to be the requirements for the RFP. Here's the deadline, and have that discussion. There might be situations where, say some of the paperwork is done, at a timeline where it's like almost a full month away from where your board meeting is going to be, then I would rely on, George to be in touch with you to either have like a quick ad hoc meeting, or, for you guys to let us know, as long as you're generally doing these XYZ things that we talked about, then you're, so those are things that as we're putting this together, we can have more conversations about. But given that we have such a short time period, I wanted to kind of give that background to you. So if you wouldn't mind, I know that you he had sort of started us off, I think, in a good precedent of sort of giving some feedback. You know, for the three of you, if you could let us know if you are excited about, all four of these, if there's any ones that you have as a preference, and so that we can do our best to take those, preferences with us as we go along, and hopefully staying flexible to all four if you can. But that feedback would be really helpful if you have it tonight.
Sure, just speaking for myself, I'm fine with all four. I appreciate you giving us parameters of the four, narrowing it down to four.
Mhm.
I do think C&D will be the most expeditious, but I'm fine with all four, remain open to all four. And are happy to meet on an ad hoc basis, so long as we're complying with all, open meeting
Mhm, of
laws
course.
and all,
Mhm.
all the other requirements.
Yeah, I'm all fine with all four. I specifically like the first one, specific project limiting funding
Mhm.
per unit. But I think it's good to have a choice and have flexibility since we have such a short period of time.
Mhm.
I agree on all four.
Great.
I personally think all of this will, we will serve city. I mean, it's, in the interest of our city.
Mhm.
But I have a comment about all of this work because the funding have a specific criteria. Yes, the due diligence will be handled by city staff. But all of this for the 20-year limit. Okay, and then we are talking about home fund. I think we should also, as the board, also should understand that, okay, there's compliance issue here too, monitoring issue and everything. So but that we have not discussed of who would be monitoring all of those, because by receiving the funding, you have to stay in compliance and when you're talking about home fund, okay, that's, you know how strict it is. So is that already, we have that in
And
place
I
already?
can offer something that might be helpful to you with that question. That's a good question. So I did talk to the staff that is responsible in the city with checking on affordable housing and making sure that they're compliant from all instances of affordable housing that has been granted from the city from, might have been grant money that they gave a developer, 10 years ago that they're still checking on it. So these examples of any affordable housing stock that are put back into the market as a result of the trust actions would be under the purview of that staff that will also be doing that with those units. So we wouldn't need to hire somebody special, and it wouldn't be something that the trust would be doing. It would be under that same person, because I did have that same exact question as you too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right. I'll send these down as well. Those are the applications that from Quincy.
Yeah.
They seem very
This is great.
straightforward, easy to use.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go. You already have that, right?
You folks got that email too?
Yes, yeah.
These are very helpful. Thank you. These are
Yeah.
Yep.
That's-
Yeah, I did go through and read them. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. That's great.
Any discussion about the four funding opportunities we discussed? Anyone? No?
No.
Could I just say one thing? So George is not taking any credit right now, and so I wanted to put him on the spot. George has worked very hard. We've talked about a lot of these for many, many, many hours, sometimes late into the evenings to go over the many hundreds of pages. And he is, because he's an asset manager for the city, has a world of experience in that area, particularly with lots and other things and a lot of the zoning requirements and all of that. So I really have twisted every single potential scenario over to George. And so I can't even count the number of times I said, for example, if we took X amount of dollars, and George has absolutely been great. And we've been able to work together really well in a short amount of time for folks that we were strangers prior to this. And yeah, so we've been able to do, I think, probably, I don't know, like maybe a year's worth of work in a short amount of time, which is hard to do because we're sort of doing this outside of our regular job function. This is sort of in addition. So I wanted to commend
I
George.
appreciate that. To that point, guys.
Thank you,
thousands of
George.
resources that we have here at the City of Lowell, we can tap into. Without Jessica's knowledge about opera, what I have and what we have resources are useless. Jessica, thank you too for this.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much.
And thank you,
for
Jessica.
both of you.
Thank you.
By the way.
Yes, I think it's, must be annual review time.
This is good, very good. Any other discussions on these folks?
No.
Anybody have any
No.
questions? So our next meeting's on November 19th, on Wednesday, November 19th, same time, same place. Anybody have any questions on that?
Nope.
Can I get a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second place.
Motion to adjourn the meeting by Eric Nelson, seconded by Ty Char. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.